Now this is a video about killing weeds. So if you like weeds, if you have an aversion to chemicals, might as well just leave it now. I know there's some of you that don't like that out there, and I can appreciate that. We try to limit the amount of weeds, the weed killer that we use, and base that on the type of weeds that we're trying to kill. For example, glyphosate is the weakest weed killer. And so if we get away with just using glyphosate, we would. Unfortunately, it doesn't kill most things. It does okay on some things. And so we really try to limit our weed use, or our weed killer use. One of the herbicides that I really like right now, that is our latest and greatest combination to kill everything, and I like it because there's no residual. We use combinations of 2,4-D and glyphosate, for example, to kill a lot of our strong broadleafs. And even then, smartweed, water hemp, pigweed, some of those need 2 sprayings about a month apart to kill them. Liberty, and we use Liberty Ultra, is a really strong one that we started using this year at the recommendation of Brandon from First Choice Food Plots, somebody we work with all the time. So he started talking to me about that last year. You should really try this. There's no residual, so we can plant the same day. In fact, this year we planted 14 acres of buckwheat. We actually put the buckwheat down first, and then I went back and sprayed it all later, right over the top of the seed. The seed was just broadcast on top of the soil before rain, so it didn't hurt the seed. We had a great buckwheat crop. Dylan's probably laying some really cool footage of some buckwheat. But our buckwheat, Dylan, you say it's got to be almost chest high,
yep.
Right now. And we'll be terminating it tomorrow to plant our fall crops. And when we terminate it, we're using that mixture of Liberty Ultra. Now, Liberty Ultra is an outstanding broadleaf killer with no residual. I would argue that it's actually a little bit stronger than 2,4-D, which is broadleaf specific post-emergent herbicide. Problem, again, with 2,4-D is it stays in the ground for 10 days to 2 weeks. And so you could plant something, get immediate germination. 5 days later, it's killing things. So we actually, when we planted our rut zone this year, which is a combination of food specifically designed for the middle of the season, we terminated the buckwheat, drilled, and sprayed all the same day. And because there was dampness in the soil, those seeds, which we planned on, the seeds germinated 3 days later. And so if there would have been 2,4-D in the ground still, it would have killed those emerging plants. So that's why we like Liberty. Now, Liberty is okay on grasses. Glyphosate is actually pretty good on grasses. So Liberty, what we do is we combine 2.5 quarts per acre of Liberty Ultra. It's a pretty strong amount. You can use 2 to 3 quarts. We go in the middle. And then we combine that with 1 quart per acre of glyphosate. That finishes off those weeds, turns them crispy brown, the grass weeds. Then we combine that with 2 pounds per acre of ammonium sulfate. So we're usually using about 17 pounds per 100 gallons of water. That means when we're killing about 4 acres with 45 gallons, it equates to we're using about 2 pounds of ammonium sulfate per acre. But we're combining that all together. And the interesting thing is glyphosate takes about 10 days for things to start turning brown and wilt. 2,4-D starts wilting right away. It takes a while to turn brown. But when we sprayed our buckwheat the other day and planted the same day, drilled into it, everything was crispy brown in 3 days. Literally turned to crisp. And so that's what we noticed the difference with Liberty, and Brandon told us that it's going to die immediately. That kills everything. We've got some great kills. What's really beneficial to that is when we spray our buckwheat, we really like to spray, roll with our Packer Max, and get rid of it, and then throw the seed down. We like that because then I don't have to worry about how tall that buckwheat gets. So for timing, it doesn't matter if I'm off by 3 weeks when I can plant. It gets too high, because if it's too high and I try to lift my spreader up and broadcast brassica, for example, it doesn't have the spread coverage. It drops sooner, and you create clumping of brassica in areas that are too thick for rows. When you do that then, and you have tall buckwheat, then you smash it down, because there's all that thatch and dying debris laying on top of the brassica seed, those tiny little seeds, then you get inconsistent germination because some of those seeds don't see sunlight. So they germinate, they don't see sun, and they die. So that's one reason we like terminating first. The other reason too is because it's a pain to walk through. I've walked through buckwheat that's this high. I've had people take a four-wheeler like behind Dylan over there and put a spreader on it that's 3 to 4 feet off the four-wheeler, and then it spreads out above that buckwheat Great, but not everyone's going to do that. To walk through is a big pain. We've even gone through and made rows through it. So what we've done is, instead of having in our fall blends, like our fall power greens, Big Boost Brassica, we don't have those big seeds like beans and even oats. Oats, believe it or not, need more moisture to germinate than rye or wheat, for example, than tillage radish, for example. So we don't like the oats in there. We don't like the beans in there because it takes a lot more moisture to germinate. And sometimes if you don't get a ton of rain, like we just got 1.3 inches out there right now, and that kind of rain might germinate. If we have a following rain within 3 days, it might germinate those beans. The problem is it germinates the bean. They start to open. You don't get rain for a week. They just sit on the top and dry and die. So those bigger seeds had to be seeded into the buckwheat first in order to get them to grow. So we forced our hand on that. Now, if the buckwheat was waist high, it works pretty well. Chest high works well for the big seeds, not so much for the brassica. Make it easier. We kill it all first, roll it, and because we're using the Liberty, it turns crispy brown within 3 days. It gives us a planting window of when we can actually throw the seed down between 2 days and 2 weeks. 2 weeks meaning weeds are still going to come at some point. I want to get those seeds in the ground and get them to germinate. So then I'm looking at about a 12-day window of weather forecast and rain to plant my fall crops. It gives us a lot bigger window. Before we had to wait. Last year we waited 9 days. Everything was crispy brown. We threw everything down. The timing worked great for rain. This really opens up my timing window for planting and getting great moisture for the crops. Liberty works awesome for that. Also, what we've done is brassica seeds are small. They all work anyways. They benefit from the dying debris and decay and dust that's on top of the soil from the dead buckwheat and weeds. But then the fall power greens, we've migrated to smaller seed sizes. Tillage radish, peas aren't so bad, late planted buckwheat, annual clover. Those are just some of the portions of that mixture. Those are all seeds that germinate really well by throwing it on the soil. So we don't have to plant into that standing buckwheat anymore. So the Liberty works really, really well for that. Before we use the 2,4-D, combine that with glyphosate, and we always just get, this is Buccaneer Plus. It's just a cheap, generic glyphosate. It's 41% solution. That's all we use. We don't need to combine those anymore. However, we do combine the glyphosate with the Liberty to make sure we can get a consistent kill on those weeds. And we noticed that. We use Liberty by itself this year, and we were out looking at some buckwheat right now, and we have portions of grass that came in. If we would have used the Liberty to begin with, that grass wouldn't be in that buckwheat. Now, 2,4-D, we still use it. 2,4-D is great. Now, a lot of you that have switchgrass out there, we're still using 1 pint per acre of 2,4-D to kill the broadleafs within the switchgrass. The problem is you can't do that when the switchgrass is young. We use quinchloric to kill out foxtail. The 2,4-D is great, but it becomes more of a late July, August spraying. So if you have broadleafs in the mix, we're mowing a couple times so that the broadleafs don't begin to shade out the young switchgrass. Like right now, a lot of our switchgrass that would be unmowed would be, it's July 15th. A lot of that switchgrass would be in that 10, 12 inch range right now. Now, if we mow it, of course, it'll be shorter. If there's weeds in there, we're mowing it so that that switch always gets sunlight. If that broadleaf shades out the switchgrass for a couple weeks, it'll kill it. So what we're doing is we're mowing it to get the switch to the age. It's not about the height of the switchgrass, or if you mowed it, it's still gaining maturity and putting roots down. Once it gets to that maturity level, towards the end of July, we've mowed it, those broadleafs are starting to come back and fill that canopy, then we can hit it in that first year of planting, 1 pint per acre of 2,4-D. I want to stress 1 pint per acre. You're better than doubling up and overlapping your rows. You're better actually leaving a strip in between. You don't want to put too much 2,4-D on it. Trust me from personal experience, I've killed switchgrass and I've injured switchgrass. It'll get black spots and stop growing for the year. It'll grow the following year, but you stunt it for the rest of the year. If it's an older switch and you spray too much 2,4-D on, meaning it's 3 or 4 feet high, it'll get black spots, it'll get weak, lay over a little bit, and it'll come back the following year, but you really injure the switch by doing that. So be very careful. So what we're doing is mowing. That switch comes up sometime in June, usually early July. It's growing really well. We want to mow it, get it to that point where it's probably been up about 6 weeks. Think about that, 6 weeks, that gets it into the 6 leaf stage. Think about each leaf per week. Once you get into that 5, 6 week, even 4 leaf stage, about 4 weeks in, you're pretty good. but 6 weeks is more of a safe bet, and that's why we're spraying 2,4-D more to the end of July, early August, and mowing to get to that point. It's the same with foxtail. The only difference is with quinchloric, we're using in that first year 5 ounces per acre, and that's it. So very, very strict with that quinchloric to kill foxtail. It'll take the foxtail out. We have some new switch this year that had a lot of foxtail in it from previous mixes and just garbage coming in. So we spray that. I just sprayed it yesterday, 5 ounces. I went fast. We use bigger tips. And that's another thing I forgot to mention with the Liberty. We upgrade the tip size. So we get to a fan tip, a little bit larger tip on our sprayer, and that allows more chemical to come out. We travel about 8 miles per hour with a standard UTV or ATV pump size. A lot of people say, well, what size is your pump? Well, what I find in the ATV and UTV sprayers is the pump size is relative to the tank and how much chemical you're putting out. So if you have a larger Fimco, that pump is typically going to be bigger than this pump over here on the ATV. It's all relative though. So our speeds are about the same. I've always driven about 7 miles an hour. We stepped that up to between 8 and 9 when we're using the Liberty. And then some of these mixes, like the quinchloric, is a little bit thicker mix, so you want the bigger tips. We're decided we've used the bigger tips for everything now, and we just drive faster. So we get more chemical out. We're driving faster, more like 9 miles an hour, even 10 miles an hour on some of these chemicals, just to make sure we don't over spray. You're better off going 3/4 of a pint per acre of 2,4-D than you are 2 pints when you're doubling up. So 2,4-D quinchloric, great to use on the switch, but we're mowing and getting to the switch to that age of at least 6 weeks into growth, not from when you planted it, but from actual germination and growth, so that we can actually take out that weed within the switch. So those are some important chemicals that we can use. Again, 2,4-D glyphosate, not bad for taking out broadleafs. Usually want a couple sprays. We're finding with Liberty we can take that out in one to kill pigweed, water hemp, smartweed, some of those problem weeds. And I'll just make a note of that, even ragweed. A lot of those weeds have a nutritional value. Deer like to browse on them, but deer like to browse on over 400 plants in habitat. There's only about 15 deer in the season that they really look at as being highly favorable. Jen just came in and just rudely interrupted us. So look at, she's like sulking over there now. Poor Jen. But there's, with those certain weeds, you can look at protein values. And I don't like that some of the scientific type whitetail content creators, they'll say, well, this ragweed is a certain percentage of protein, so it's good for deer. It's not. They browse on over 400 things. Poison ivy. Do you want to feel the poison ivy? It's the same as a field of ragweed. They're not going to eat it during the fall, when they need it the most too. They have all these weeds they can eat all summer long. That's what they should be eating. That's fine. That's browse. It's a piece of their diet, a small portion of their diet. But if it's just you have these fields of weeds, a lot of times those noxious weeds like smartweed, pigweed, just two, for example, lamb's quarters, they can take over your entire field in 2 years. And you're not going to have anything else, and you have no fall draw. So don't pat yourself on the back if you have some of these. This is why we're really important on a weed control. I'd rather plant 2 acres and do it clean than 4 acres and do it dirty, because I want those small food plots to have total concentrated attraction. I want full volume, and that's going to give us the best chance of building a great herd and a great hunt. Now, we look over at when we have clethodim. Clethodim is great for taking grasses out of clover. And so we use it on our clover. That's the one chemical we do spray. You can use Butarac with a 2,4-D, Butarac, 2,4-DB. You can spray that on your clover, but unfortunately it takes out your chicory. And chicory is a very important piece of our component. I don't want to plant a clover field without chicory. It's a great nurse crop. It brings nutrients from deep inside the soil, has a long taproot, brings up moisture. It shades out the clover, gives higher volume. It even turns darker green. We've done studies from that over 20 years ago. I did personally, where this field has chicory that I added to, this doesn't. So I've always added chicory to clover, even when these mixes didn't have it to begin with. So I don't want to use broadleaf killer because I don't want to take out the chicory. But we use clethodim. Clethodim takes out the grasses, and there's a lot of conflicting information online. And after practicing this for several years, I think it used to be called like Post or Vantage. I spent a lot of money for it back when I didn't have the money to spend in the early 2000s spraying. I think it was Post. for grasses out of clover. But get a lot more affordable now. And the great thing about clethodim, we use 1 pint per acre or 16 ounces. And then we're using 1 quart per acre of crop oil combined with that. It seems like a lot, but crop oil doesn't really do much. It creates a stickum, allows that clethodim to get into the plant. It's very important. You have to use it. In a pinch, we've used Dawn dish soap. There's conflicting information online to whether that even works or not. It worked for us. I would not recommend it. This crop oil is super cheap, but that's the mix we're using, is 1 pint per acre of clethodim combined with 1 quart of crop oil. Now, we use simazine too. Simazine is a pre-emergent. Now, if you've been spraying your fields, let's say you're going to spray your field and it's full of weeds. Well, those established weeds that have a good root system and are already established aren't necessarily going to be killed by the simazine. However, if you're spraying, say, a mixture of Liberty, right when the weeds are first greening up, they're 8-10 inches high in the spring, you spray it, kill it, now it's burned down. Now, that's not a bad time to add 3 quarts per acre of simazine to kill out and use as a pre-emergent for your switchgrass. So you might do that after it's burned down. That's a great way to do it, as opposed to before and getting a small percentage of your weeds killed because it's an established field. Kill them first, get it down to dirt and brown and everything's dead, because the simazine works and activates and kills or keeps plants from germinating, whether by seed or by root. And simazine can be a great, and it's really important, because if you don't use simazine, you're going to start getting a lot of broadleaves creeping in to that switchgrass. So a lot of times when we've made the mistake of not using simazine, meaning me, I'm the only one that would make the mistake around here, right, Jen? But I'll use, if I don't use simazine with switchgrass, it comes back to haunt you, because you'll get a lot of broadleaves. And some of those broadleaves, like giant thistle, can get so out of control so fast and shade out the switchgrass, it can kill it. So that simazine as a pre-emergent is really critical, very important piece of chemical program for establishing switch. And again, you know, with all of this, whether it's food plots or switch or even pollinators, you want to get the weeds out. Weeds don't just, oh, there's 20% weeds in the plot. Well, 20% weeds takes out 80% of your food plot volume. Your switchgrass, it makes the stands in the actual stalks of the switchgrass smaller diameter and weaker and shorter. So you get an overall lot poorer quality stand that falls over. And that's the whole idea of using switchgrass. It's the strongest switchgrass that can stand up to bad weather and winds and snow and everything else. So, Dylan, can you think of anything chemical related that I've missed in all these sprayings and talking about all these mixes? And
touched on a lot.
I know we didn't touch on Garlon. We haven't used that for taking out woody briars and things. That's something we'll get into next year, and we'll bring that to you at that time. Again, I'm sorry if you don't like killing weeds and you like weeds, but you know, weeds to me, it's just like the farmers around here. If you have a farmer around here that has a weedy field, they're lazy. They're bad farmers. And I think it's no different with food plotters. There's no benefit. There's no real benefit. You can't just look at protein levels, and I'll even flip that around like alfalfa. We don't plant alfalfa for deer other than within our clover mix, but a straight alfalfa field. You can't look at it like, well, alfalfa is 27% protein. It's very attractive, so you plant it for deer. Well, once the frost hit, it dies out. The deer don't hit it in November, December. You have to look at when is the deer utilizing the weeds, alfalfa, whatever crop you're intending, and you have to look at the pluses and minuses, the big picture. For example, if you have a lot of deer attracted on your property during the summer, including bucks, does, and fawns, that could be really bad, because if you have established fawning grounds on your property, does and fawns that are here today are here to stay. They stay into the fall. And again, you're missing that timing with anything. I'd rather start attracting those does and fawns in August, September. They're not slamming my fall crops when I plant them 1st of August or in July sometime. And you're getting full volume. And I'm getting full volume because I'm taking care of weeds. And I'm looking at my crops, my food plots, my switchgrass, as I really want to hit that proper timing for when we're actually planting. Now, I can say there's a lot of old B-roll we have of me driving the four-wheeler without a mask and all that kind of stuff. Most of the sprayings we do nowadays, we do in this RTV. I've sprayed up to 130 acres total combined, not at one time, throughout a summertime between Wisconsin and Minnesota out of this RTV. It's got a sealed cab, it's air conditioned, and that's my preferred way to spray because we're not getting any fumes inside the cab. It's really closed climate inside that cab right there. I like that for spraying, but always practice safety. We're always at washing our hands and wipes and everything we have in here, Clorox wipes to make sure we have the chemicals off our hands when we're going out in the field. So of course be safe with it, but at the same time, you know, if I could get away with using glyphosate for everything, I would, because it's very weak. And but bottom line is we do use chemicals because we want to get the most out of our resources of time and money spent, and we want to help the deer herd out and the wildlife that's on this property to the highest level possible, and you should too. Now, we get a lot of questions all the time about this. I try to answer your questions as best as possible, and you know, it's all relative to one thing, so always look at that big picture. I might be giving advice for this right here, but it might not apply to everything else. One thing we get questions on a lot is calibrating the sprayers that we use. And never, never, never go by ounces per gallon of some chemical that you use. That's more of big ag sprayers, calibrated, computer controlled. What you need to calibrate your sprayer for is how much does it take to cover an acre. So I would suggest going out about 8 miles an hour. And for this right here, this Fimco, it's 45 gallons. Put 15 gallons in there. Go out at 8 miles an hour. Try to be efficient with your turns. Turn the sprayer on and off. We have the switch right down here by our leg, so we can turn it on and off from inside the cab. Make our turns, try to be really efficient spraying, and see how many gallons it takes to cover an acre. For us, it's usually about 10.5 to 11 gallons of water out of that per acre. This ATV sprayer, because there's not as many nozzles on the back, we might find that it's more like 12.5 gallons per acre. But do that first, and then add the appropriate amount of chemical per acre, and you're golden. And what you'll find is we're all about the same. That one might be that 25 gallon tank, I can spray 2 acres. This 45 gallon tank, I can spray a good 4. Hope that makes sense. This is gonna be a little bit more efficient. It's got more nozzles on it. And if you're using a backpack sprayer, that's the least efficient. So you're gonna need a lot more water, a lot more chemical, or a lot more water at least to deliver that chemical. It doesn't matter if it takes 20 gallons of water to deliver the chemical or 8 gallons of water to deliver the chemical. It's still the same amount of chemical. That's why you can't go by ounces per gallon. Many of you have questions. This is right now, we're in the mix of doing this. This isn't something typically I answer in January when I see a question on YouTube, because it doesn't pertain to anything we're doing at that moment in the whitetail world. I want things to be pertinent and be applicable to as many people as possible. I might hit that question if I have time. I really want you to check out our new podcast. We rely on questions from you. That podcast is built on you call in. We have a voicemail. We have the phone number. And in the description of the video, you call in. We use those recorded voicemails. We insert them into the podcast, and we answer Joe from Pennsylvania this question. And we play that out, whether you leave a half minute voicemail or 45 seconds, whatever it is. And then what Jesse does, Jen and Jesse choose those questions. I don't even know what questions are coming down the pipe. Jen's just going to throw them in there so they're off the cuff. But Jesse will call some of you to try to say, hey, if you can, or probably text you, but see if you could be on the podcast at a certain time. We're going to be shooting at 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. And would you be willing to call in with your question? And so we'd like to have some live like that so we can actually discuss with you. Because I love answering questions, love trying to help out as much as possible, whether it's chemicals, herd management, big buck hunting, hunting the weather, whatever it might be. I love it, and I can't wait to talk with you and discuss all things whitetail soon, potentially on a podcast coming up in the next month.